we go. So, this it was a series of pictures, and it's not mine, but I thought this was fascinating. There was a study done of Americans, 5,000 Americans, and it asked them to, using, this kind of brackets of the quintiles of the economy, distribute the wealth of America according to what they believed was the reality. And you probably just can barely see it on this image, but that's this first white line, this kind of going up to the top, is what Americans believed was the wealth in society. And then it asked them what was their ideal. And so the ideal is this other more even line where you have maybe 10 to 20% of the wealth, or 10 to 20 times more of the wealth in the upper quintile, but still a pretty even distribution across the quintiles. And then this is the graphic that shows the reality, right, where the top, never mind the top quintile, but the top 1% is so large it needs an entire bracket of its own. And 40% of the wealth in the United States is held by the top 1%. And then I thought the most telling aspect of this study, though, was that the 1% population in the United States owns 50% of the stocks, bonds, mutual funds, instruments of finance. And 50% of Americans, the lower 50%, own only 0.5%. So half of a share of the world's financial instruments. And so I think this is telling because it says something more broadly about where wealth inequality is coming from and about the growth of wealth inequality and even of the growth of wealth in the United States. It's in financial instruments. It's not a wealth grounded in materiality. And so I know this is kind of a stretch to what does this look like in 20 years, what does truth look like? But I think that unevenness of the production of the economy is very much related to what's happening in other areas of other disciplines and other areas of operation, and it has ramifications for what's happening in the academy as well. Particularly, maybe not even necessarily in the traditional academy, but this idea of who's producing truth. So the capacity to overwhelm academic institutions or a conventional scientific process is very much tied to this figure. And so I started with the Heritage Foundation. This is something, I think the Koch brothers are one of the big funders of the Heritage Foundation. They're also big supporters of MIT, ironically enough, but there you go. There's some, if truth can be bought, here is where it will be bought.
Yeah, fascinating. I can hear Jerry agreeing. I think it's our last round. Feel free to jump in and chime in with each other.
For me, scientifically, from a financial market perspective, it doesn't square up these charts because securities are owned largely by institutional investors, so it's the biggest pension funds and the biggest insurances. And the wealth of an individual, even the richest individual, is very little compared with CalPERS, CalSTRS, and the big insurance funds. So while I think the broad relationship is there, but that 1% own that much compared to everybody else, I believe that is more the think tanks that produce these charts that have a bit of a personal interest in that direction. So I think when you scientifically look to who owns the securities and then you split up pension funds on individuals and insurances on individuals, I think you're right that those that don't have pensions and that don't have insurance will have nothing. But it's not that 1% of individuals have that much. I personally don't see these numbers as fully accurate.
This checks out to me, though, that the Fed does a survey every 3 years, a survey of consumer finances, and this would square pretty much with that. So this is asking at the household level, how much do you own in stocks, bonds, other financial instruments? So if I own a BlackRock ETF and I own $1 billion of it, I'm going to report $1 billion, and the people in the bottom 50% will report 0. So if you survey at the household level, this seems not implausible to me.
There's another nice graphic that kind of puts this in perspective. And again, this is just the picture because I had to take out the sources and everything. I probably should have sent all of that as a unified image, but there is a lot of data to support this. And fair enough, I haven't extensively dug through the data, but there's a picture of Jeff Bezos' income last year. And it was like $32 billion in 1 year. That was his income. And there's 2,000 billionaires in the world now.
Yeah, that wasn't his income, that was the appreciation of Amazon, which when it drops is gone again. So I think personally, if you only take the consumer finances, I think that probably squares because many people own very little retail funds. But if you include their pension pot, it doesn't square anymore. It may be that in the US, which is different from Europe, it squares if you deduct all the loans and the debt they have. That one I can't say. But certainly from a European perspective, I don't think that would be that extreme.
Find the truth.
That's probably how truth looks like.
Yeah.
Perceived.
You can download the Survey of Consumer Finances data if you like and run regressions. It's very publicly accessible, so you can check.
As are the pension fund data. You can.
Yeah.
Before the conference next year, Nation will find the truth.
Yeah.
Report back. Thank you for volunteering. Okay, thank you guys. That was really interesting. And Jerry, you have a facade here from Ann Arbor.
I have a facade, so I'm glad that there's someone from urban planning and architecture who can help us sort of explain this stuff. So this is kind of the bookend to the matrix picture. You know, I claim that the Enlightenment claim is that there's a surface and then there's a deep structure to it, and it seems to me that built into capitalism is a set of pressures that lead us to valorize the facade and not look too deeply into what's behind it. So if you wander around a lot of big cities, London is like this, Washington, D.C., the fronts of the buildings look like it's 1850 and it's these old townhouses and so on. And then you walk inside and it's completely transformed and they have glass roofs. And what happens is that architects, maybe at the behest of urban planning commissions, say you have to maintain the historical character of this neighborhood, even as you completely change what's behind it. And so this was a Carnegie Library in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and the folks that were building the dorm that was going up there were told, but you have to preserve this historically important Carnegie Library, and the compromise is you save only the front and everything else is completely new construction. And so you can wander around a world that's kind of like Disneyland, where you've got these facades, or, you know, Potemkin Village, you've got these surfaces that make you feel like you're seeing those old familiar institutions, but behind it, everything's new and unfamiliar. So maybe there really isn't any truth behind it. Maybe we wander into this world where facades are valued over sort of the depth behind it. So that's the psychedelic thing there.
And earlier we had Keynesian Disneyland, and it is Ann Arbor. Was that your term? It is Ann Arbor, so yeah, fascinating. I hadn't seen it in construction. I've seen it now, and it's very hard to even see. So
Yeah.
the way they did it, it's you know, not kind of making it a standout piece of that building. It's sort of by the shipping dock or something.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, definitely did it. Wow, okay, we've all been curious about this one. We're looking forward to it. A little Liechtenstein.
It's very simple. I think I'm very worried about a lot of things, but I'm not worried about one thing, and I don't know what truth in 20 years will exactly look like, but the human condition will always be the same. I lived in a country, we had 9 years of pretty heavy truth manipulation in the last century. That didn't last. Half of it lived 40 more years in another world where the truth was heavily manipulated, didn't last. I'm pretty optimistic that the human condition and, you know, the way we feel about our bodies, the way we react to it, interact, will pretty much be the same. Of course, I mean, and this is interesting, Liechtenstein was at the end of the pop, at least this series, after Andy Warhol's Tomato Soup, after Rauschenberg, Oldenburg, all these other guys who have very much painted a fairly sober, commercialized reality of popular culture. And here he tells us a different story, of course, with the kind of pattern, the blue dots. It has a particular popular culture, temporary appearance. I think that will be the case in 20 years too. What that will be, I have no idea. But I'm pretty optimistic about the human condition in the long term.
Wrap us up. I think there will probably be some questions about the human condition here. Anyway, maybe we'll just finish off
Please.
Andreas, and then we can come back to the
Please.
human condition in just a second. I think that you provoked some thinking, so we'll let you ponder it for just a couple of
Yeah,
minutes.
so the only statement I can make with some confidence is that you don't find the truth. I personally think one needs to keep searching. So, and in a quest to keep searching, if I can recommend one thing, this is a Tristan Harris video that we discussed at dinner 2 days ago. So Tristan Harris, has anybody seen Tristan Harris' video on news feeds and how they potentially manipulate? See, that's stunning. So I saw that video by chance, and then I asked on LinkedIn and on WhatsApp lots of friends if they'd seen it, even friends that work in tech, even friends that work in tech on the West Coast and hadn't seen it. So this is a video, it's a TED Talk that criticizes news feeds and how they manipulate our minds. So in that sense, Facebook or Twitter is a very different thing from a WhatsApp. WhatsApp is raw, whatever your friends want to send us. Facebook and Twitter is what they want to send you. And so the question then arises is, does the newsfeed recommend the video that criticizes the newsfeed? And it appears that the newsfeed doesn't seem to do that, or all of the people overlook it. So it is, Google does recommend it. You only need to search Tristan Harris newsfeed and you get it. It's 20 minutes like any TED Talk, and it's, in my view, extremely enlightening.